So I wanted to start from this image here. This is a basic material for our project to work with. Is a printed sales catalog. It's pretty intuitive to browse. It has information over the producer and seller, and then the city of print, and then the year of publication. And then you'll not be surprised what follows is a list of books with their prices. The reason why I'm starting here is actually to show you this other version of the same sales catalog, which has been refashioned by someone. I take it as an epiphenomenon of an interest that was growing into the publishers and book dealers community. What is interesting about this copy of the same printed catalog that I was showing before is the way it has been refashioned to serve eventually a purpose that the original catalog could not serve. And I think that this cut and paste work carried out here was mainly done to obtain a very interesting result, which is, which is the blank space here that could be annotated, following logics that we are yet to discover, I guess. Now, what comes next is another type of source that we are working on within this project. This is known by the audience, by the wide audience, as the Giunta's publishing house Stockbook. I will use the term Stockbook in the next minutes, although I will spend the next minutes to try to prove that this was nothing but a stockbook, and that is an inventory of books in stock. But before doing that, I have to perhaps anticipate what who the Giuntas were. They might not known to a wider audience, although their names still circulate, as I'm pinpointing here, because the stockbook, non-stockbook that I'm gonna talk about, it belongs to this publishing house. Now, what I want to pinpoint about this firm is the European ambition and scope that they developed throughout the centuries, throughout the decades of the 16th century. You can see here a map of their commercial network. The red dots represents the places where the Giunta were able to place a representative of their family. The green dots represent a proxy network that they were capable to build throughout proxy agents. So another thing that I wanted to show you is the output of Bernardo, di Bernardo Giunti, which is going to be our hero for these 20 minutes or so. What I want to pinpoint is the fact that Bernardo Giunti did not have an impressive output and overall an impressive career, especially if you compare his career to that of his rich uncle, Luca Antonio Giunti. Also, another evidence I want to pinpoint is the fact that, qualitatively speaking, his production didn't seem impressive. So he was mainly invested in producing small format vernacular works that could perhaps be commercialized primarily below the Alps. That's another thing to keep in mind. Although his career wasn't impressive, then he had some visibility within the Venetian publishing community. In fact, he was granted some representative role in the Venetian community of printers. Now, things that we know about the stockbook that I will try to demolish as a Stockbook from now on. We do know his composition. It's 313 leaves. We do know its chronology, which spans from the year 1600 up until roughly the 40s. How can I do date the manuscript is through internal evidence, matching the listings representing the books, a quantity of books. I'm able to see the internal chronology of this manuscript. Here is a biopsy of the data within the Stockbook. What you see here is a sample of a page. You can notice that the best quality data that you can earn from this manuscript pertains listings by author, title, and format, and then price. And what you see here, it's another very important element, which is the number of printing sheets, a quantity and a figure that whose importance has been pinpointed by the papers that preceded me. Now, if this is the Stockbook at its best in terms of providing information on the listings, it's also very important to notice that the Stockbook could be very sketchy in providing some information. It's very important to me, it became very important to me to find this type of sketchy descriptions, because it defines what was the common denominator of this data set. So you could not go below enlisting author and title. Then another important characteristic of this manuscript is its internal distribution of data. I highlights here that there is a set of data that are organized by literary genre. And then there is a section which enlists more or less the same data by provenience. And then there is a little portion of the manuscript which enter data that are most recent to the manuscript, whereas these parts here were composed primarily during the 1604. This, the chronology here is a bit more recent. What else? Internal search aids are also important to pinpoint the internal logic of this tool. You can see that you could find letter tags which would organize the data alphabetically for rapid browsing of the data, and then you could also find data organized by provenience and letter tags that would help you quickly browse the data. I also noticed that one portion of the Stockbook, which is the one that contain the listings of Venetian or other Italian printers, had a further, I would say, memory aid, which is paging. This is the only part of the Stockbook that has original indication of pages for leaves. Now, nothing that I covered so far would disprove that this manuscript could be an inventory of books in stock. In fact, it belonged to a bookseller, book dealer, book producer, and it is quite intuitive to think that a dealer, a book dealer, would need a device that would help him browse throughout his stocks. But that holds true until some conflicting evidence arises. For example, the first thing that struck me about this manuscript is the absence of quantities. The paper that preceded me showed a Cahiers de Francfort that did provide quantities, no, for copies. Here, there's a 100% absence of this information. And it's awkward for an inventory, because as you see here, this is a inventory from around the same period. This inventory is mostly about quantity, and it describes the objects that are inventored very briefly. The Stockbook does the exact opposite. Doesn't provide quantities, but it's very thorough in providing information about the quality of the list of the books that are enlisted, as if the writer was trying to get as many information as possible before these books would actually disappear from sight. Or maybe these books, he never even saw them, and I can kind of prove it to you. This happened to me when I was working on the manuscript within the context of our project. I just finished transcribing and analyzing a portion of the Stockbook that pertain the production in Turin. Angela Nuovo was so kind to share with me a different source, a printed catalog coming from Turin. And when I looked at it, I was like, I already saw this face. And in fact, what I noticed is that the portion of the manuscript that I just finished transcribing was nothing but the exact copy of a printed catalog, which doesn't make sense for a inventory, right? And this happened again and again. For example, I noticed that the printed catalog that I started from in this presentation was also deconstructed in various portions. The data therein contained was deconstructed in various portions of the manuscript, and this didn't again make sense. Now, then there is another incident that helped me with rethinking the quality and the nature of this manuscript. And here, a big shout out goes to Flavia Bruni, who was the first to study this portion, this listing, and highlighting the nonsensical incipit of this listing, which reads as a inventory of books owned by Francesco De Franceschi. So, whose inventory is this? Is it Giunti's or is it Francesco De Franceschi? So I was quite confused. Then, in order to amuse myself in this big house, I started drawing maps of that would represent the internal geography of this manuscript. And that is the internal geography by provenience. I wanted to draw this map to reassure myself that this would perfectly match the envision of the Giunta's commercial network. Except it didn't. It really did not. There were glorious absences, such as most of the family's continental hubs. Italy was a bit represented within, and was actually better represented. And this is when I started going, yeah, maybe I start to understand the inner logic, because what this inner organization of geographical, of the data by geographical provenience would actually highlight that this so-called Stockbook would give you many information about the state of the art of the book market in northeastern Venice, which is more or less the range the book market that Bernardo Giunti could reach and was perhaps interested in. And with this in mind, and with the evidence, one evidence I showed you earlier, which is the common denominator of the listing being title and author, I started thinking maybe what this manuscript does is note down the presence of relevant commodities, namely books, within the market of reach of Bernardo Giunti. This could be an hypothesis, yes, except that there was a glorious problem, which is the presence of so many German books in this manuscript. Very well organized, very thoroughly noted down. And Germany was a place which the Giunti network seemed to have no interest in. So it wouldn't make sense to put so much interest on northern, eastern Italy plus Germany, except if you are reminded by the very urban geography of Venice, that German merchants, not only booksellers, were actually an endemic presence in Venice. Okay, so with this in mind, the internal geography of the Stockbook was mainly Venetians, even when Germans were involved. Okay, so if you embrace the hypothesis that this manuscript would help you analyze the presence of books in circulation in your market of interest, then lots of conflicts that I found throughout my work start making more sense. For example, it makes sense to note down which books was Francesco De Franceschi, actually a collaborator of Bernardo Giunti, was commercializing at the time, because they both had their best interest into not entering in a competition, into avoiding competition. Competition was bad for everyone. And also, it made lots of sense to note down very recent printed book catalogs, because printed book catalogs could let you know which were the best sellers. For example, this example here, as a book that did not sell for 30 years or something, or books that just hit the market very recently, so recently that actually were not yet printed by the time this catalog was published. In fact, this listing was not even priced. Then also, phenomena like this made lots of sense. What you see here is the description of 3 instances in which a single title had hit the market in recent times. What is most interesting here to me is this phenomenon here. The description of a book in 12/0, composed by 3 printing sheets, and the same item being again described, except that noted down is the adjective new. Okay, so now this mess start making a little bit more sense. The Stockbook could have been, in fact, a research aid to conduct market researches to avoid competition. But if you embrace this conclusion, then it comes with consequences. For example, you may think that merchants of the time were already sort of elaborating in an empirical way concepts that are very commonsensical in classic economics concepts such as market contraction, market risk, and market fluctuations. I would like to finish by proposing the idea that this empirical approach started under the umbrella of the book trade. First off is because I root for book traders. It's what I do for a living. But also I should consider that books, printed books, were among the first commodities that would hit the market, the European market, carrying a tracking number along. So this is all.